Okay, so we've all seen the headlines about Jeffrey Epstein, right? But what if that whole public story was just the cover? We're about to dive into a document, a source called the Scientific Indictment, that argues something else entirely. It claims that behind all those horrific, well-known crimes was a secondary mission, a plan to fundamentally re-engineer humanity itself.
All right, to really wrap our heads around this theory, we have to start with its core premise, and it's a wild one. The source claims that the human body isn't just flesh and blood. As you can see in this quote, it's described as a temple, a piece of incredibly advanced technology that it calls the divine hardware.
So if you accept that idea, that our bodies are this kind of hardware, then according to the indictment, all of human history changes. It's not just a struggle between good and evil anymore. It's a technological war, a massive, cosmic crime scene where the ultimate prize is control over our very biology.
So what does that actually mean, divine hardware? Well, according to this source, it's like we're all walking, talking bioelectric antennas. Our DNA isn't just a static chemical blueprint. It's a living, dynamic coil designed to receive and transmit information, a frequency. The source even poetically calls it the song of the cosmos.
And this is where the theory takes an even stranger turn. The source claims that we, modern humans, are what it calls human 2.0, a deliberately downgraded version. It alleges that there was an original, superior human 1.0, but we were altered ages ago by these ancient, non-human entities it calls Archons, all to make us disconnected and, well, easier to control.
Okay, so you're probably wondering, how does this ancient kind of cosmic war connect to the world today? Well, the indictment argues that the whole battlefield has shifted. The new front line in this war for our biology isn't fought in the heavens. It's being fought in the labs and lecture halls of our most elite scientific institutions.
And on this new battlefield, the weapon of choice isn't bombs or bullets. It's funding, cold hard cash. The goal, according to the indictment, is to use money to infiltrate and basically hijack the very science that defines what life is.
And this is where Jeffrey Epstein allegedly becomes a central figure. The indictment doesn't portray him as some random, eccentric philanthropist. No, it paints him as a strategic operator. He was funneling millions into huge institutions like Harvard and MIT, specifically targeting fields like evolutionary biology, genetics, and AI. The alleged objective? To purchase influence and, in the source's absolutely chilling words, to buy the code to human biology.
So this brings us right to the core of the indictment's argument about Epstein's entire network. It alleges that he was an operational node who was running a mission with two very distinct layers. One layer is the one we all saw in the headlines, and the other was a much deeper, profoundly biological mission.
Yeah, this slide here really lays out the two competing narratives perfectly. On the left, you have the official story we all know, a horrific criminal enterprise built for sexual blackmail and personal indulgence. But on the right, you have the indictment's claim that all of that was just a front for a dual-purpose weapon, one aimed at geopolitical control and genetic engineering.
Now, that first mission was the geopolitical one. The blackmail operation served as a kind of intelligence honeypot. The goal was to create what the source calls an archonic leash, a way to control the world's most powerful people, to guarantee their absolute obedience to a larger agenda.
But see, the indictment insists that the blackmail was just the surface layer, the noisy distraction. This quote really gets to the absolute heart of the theory. It says that beneath all that political maneuvering was a secondary, deeply esoteric, and frankly, terrifyingly Gnostic objective: the direct manipulation of our divine hardware.
So where was this whole scientific agenda supposed to actually happen? The source claims the real headquarters for this operation wasn't the infamous private island at all. It was Epstein's enormous and super remote Zorro Ranch, way out in the New Mexico desert. And this is where it gets really, really dark. Citing what it calls insider accounts, the indictment makes its most disturbing claim yet, that the Zorro Ranch was being set up to become a literal baby-making factory. And this connects directly to Epstein's very public, well-documented obsession with eugenics and transhumanism.
All right, so this slide breaks down the alleged four-step blueprint for what was supposed to happen at Zorro Ranch. Let's walk through it. Step 1 is procurement, using the trafficking network to acquire women as surrogates. Step 2, implantation. The plan was to seed these surrogates with a specific, and it says, archonic DNA lineage. Step 3, creation, to engineer a brand new designer bloodline. And the final objective of all this? To build a human vessel that was inherently subservient, one that was perfectly tuned to what the source calls the demiurgic frequency, the control signal of those Archons.
So you see, this whole Zorro Ranch Blueprint, it wasn't just some abstract evil idea. The indictment presents it as the real-world, physical attempt to literally manufacture that human 2.0 we talked about earlier, a being engineered from its very DNA to be a controllable vessel, stripped of its spiritual independence.
So when you start to connect all of these dots, from the strategic funding of genetic science all the way to this horrific blueprint for Zorro Ranch, the indictment argues that it all points to one single ultimate goal.
According to this source, the blackmail, the money, the political control, it was all just a means to an end. The ultimate ambition, the real prize, was something so much bigger: to seize the reins of human evolution and literally rewrite our species from the inside out.
The indictment boils this entire horrifying agenda down to one final chilling phrase. This wasn't just about hacking computers or bank accounts. The entire project, it claims, was an attempt to bypass our free will by hijacking our biology, an attempt to hack the very hardware of the soul.
Look, the claims laid out in this scientific indictment are, well, they're staggering, and they're deeply, deeply disturbing. They completely reframe a story we thought we knew into this epic narrative of cosmic and genetic warfare. And whether you believe it or not, it leaves us all with one final unsettling question to think about. What is the price when the source code of humanity itself is put up for sale?